Hi, welcome to Hyrule Dissected 3. I've spent the last few weeks of my life letting enemies batter around Link. This is in an attempt to answer the question, how much damage does every enemy deal? And also, how much damage does every enemy attack deal? But first, we need to get a proper understanding of how damage works. Here we have Link. He's naked. Okay, maybe not that naked. Here we have Link. He's currently not wearing armor. We have this Bokoblin too. He is also not wearing armor, and really wants to punch Link in the face. When the Bokoblin punches Link, it will deal a certain amount of damage, which is determined by your hearts. Let's say the Bokoblin dealt 4 damage. 1 damage equals a quarter of a heart, so 4 damage equals 1 heart. Here, let's give Link some armor. Link now has 4 defense. The Bokoblin punches Link again. Let's say that punch was especially hard and deals 8 damage. That 8 damage gets subtracted from his defense to give the output, a total of 4 damage. Most enemies wield weapons as well. Each enemy has 3 stats determining damage. Base damage, which is almost always meant for unarmed hits, ranged damage, which is used for things like bows, and then weapon damage. Let's discuss this one for now. Weapon damage is a stat that is added onto any currently held weapon. So our Bokoblin friend from earlier has a weapon damage stat of 3, which means when he's holding a weapon, the damage of the weapon he's holding gets added to the weapon damage stat, for a total of 6 damage. All weapon types have secret multipliers that the game never tells you about. One-handed weapons have a 1 times damage multiplier, two-handed weapons have a 1.05 times damage multiplier, and spears have a 0.75 times multiplier. So, with all of this math in place, to get the total damage taken, multiply the damage of the held weapon with the held weapon's type, add that damage to the enemy's weapon damage stat, then subtract that from your armor. That's the total damage you'll take. Here's the formula for the math nerds out there. Side note, weapon-specific multipliers are super finicky. Sometimes they'll round up, sometimes they'll round down. I don't really know why. You will also take at least 1 damage from any attack, no matter how much defense you have. Got all that? Okay, good. Because now we're going to talk about another mechanic. Gloom. Gloom damage, in a nutshell, is the damage the enemy would deal normally, multiplied by 0.3. So take for example, the Silver Lynel. His melee damage combined with the halberd is 94. Multiply that with 0.3, and you have 28.2. Round that up, and that's the total amount of gloom damage you'll take, which is equal to 8 hearts. Gloom damage is slightly different than normal damage, in that taking a single point of gloom damage to a heart will gloom the entire thing, as opposed to only glooming a section of the heart, which would have been cool, but oh well.
Hey Maya, are you gonna talk about boss attacks?
No. I'll be saving that for another video, because this video is probably going to be long enough as is, and I don't want to spend another 7 years on it.
But Maya, I want
No,
you to
stop!
talk about
I'm not doing boss
attacks.
As per usual, an extensive spreadsheet, a very extensive spreadsheet, can be found in the description of all my work if you'd like to take a look at it for yourself. Or if you don't want to watch the video, which is perfectly understandable. Please take all information provided with a grain of salt, since I'm not perfect and can make mistakes. And without further ado, let us begin. To preface, this is how this segment is going to work. I'm going to show a category of enemies, then list off their attacks and how much damage they do. I'm also going to try to throw in some additional facts whenever possible to keep things interesting. Bokoblins. Obviously a pretty common enemy, and I won't be talking about the items thrown from their backpacks since it just deals the damage of the thrown item. Let's start with the punch. The punch is a pretty basic attack, and Bokoblins will only do it when empty-handed. Horn Charge. Also pretty basic and deals double the damage of the Bokoblin's base damage. Black and silver Bokoblins will spend more time charging than the lesser variants. One-handed Swipe. Not really too much to say about this one. Like many multi-hit attacks, they'll stop their swing combo after you hit. One-handed Jump Attack. All Bokoblins are capable of this, but red Bokoblins will spend more time winding up beforehand. One-handed Overhead Swing. Red and blue Bokoblins can't do this attack, making it exclusive to black and silver Bokoblins, which is a trend we'll be seeing for other types of enemies as well. Two-handed Swipe. This attack certainly exists. Two-handed Overhead Swing. Only black and silver Bokoblins can do this one, and it can be pretty deadly in the wrong situations. Spear Jab. Ego Stabby. Spear Overhead Swing. This one's sort of unique, as every Bokoblin can do it. Red and blue Bokoblins will swing 3 times, with black and silver ones swinging 9 times. I presume this is the only overhead swing attack that lesser variants can do because of spears being lighter. Bow Shot. Silver Bokoblins will spend a lot less time aiming before firing. Pebble Throw. To just get this out of the way so I don't have to mention it later, all Pebble throws deal 1 damage, no matter the type of variant or the enemy. Rock/object throw. It's the same for this one too. With the way collision damage works, all objects thrown from every enemy deal 4 damage. Yes, this even includes explosive barrels. But Moblins are a little bit different. Speaking of, Moblins. Probably my favorite enemy because of how goofy they look with their extremely long snouts. Overhead punch. Like Bokoblin punches, Moblins will only do this while unarmed. Kick. Moblins will do this one regardless of if they have a weapon, and it can be extremely annoying as there's almost no wind-up to it. Horn Slam. Large bonk. One-handed stab. You haven't lived until you've been stabbed by a club. One-handed double swipe. This one's a lot rarer than the stab, as Moblins like to stab apparently. One-handed repeated swipe. Only black and silver Moblins can do this one, and will swipe 7 times before finishing with a grand slam. Two-handed swing. Moblins will try to follow up with more swipes if the first one didn't hit. Two-handed overhead slam. This one has a pretty long wind-up with the weapon getting stuck on the ground after the attack. Two-handed repeated swing. Red and blue ones can't do this, and is basically just the one-handed repeated swipe. Spear jab. I wish I had more to say about this one. Spear, run, and jab. Basically the attack before, but with a running start. Spear swing. This one can be pretty devastating as it has a huge area to it. Spear repeated swing. Like other repeated swipes, only black and silver Moblins can do this attack. It also won't end with a slam. Bow shot. Like Bokoblins, silver variants will spend much less time aiming before shooting. Moblins can throw pebbles and objects, but they can also throw Bokoblins too. It's pretty rare, as they can only throw Bokoblins while unarmed or just wielding a sword, and there actually needs to be a Bokoblin nearby. The thrown Bokoblin deals the base damage of whatever Bokoblin was thrown. Now for Lizalfos. I hate Lizalfos. Tail swipe. This is basically the unarmed punch for Lizalfos. Tongue shot. A pretty neat attack for closing distance, but it can get annoying at times. Spit shot. This is sort of like the Pebble throw for Lizalfos, but unlike Pebbles, spit shots scale with their base damage. Horn slash. Good God, they love to do this attack, and I have no idea why. One-handed swipe. Pretty basic, not much to it. One-handed jump attack. Can be easily strafed. Two-handed swipe. Weapon go bonk. Spear jab. Can be potentially dangerous combined with the Lizalfos' agility. Spear jump attack. Very similar to the one-handed jump attack, but the spear gets stuck in the ground for a bit after landing. Bow shot. As you might expect, silver variants will fire bows much faster than other variants. Now, let's discuss weapon throwing. Lizalfos can throw weapons, but it depends on their health percentage. For regular Lizalfos, it's 50% health. For blue, fire, and ice, it's 33% health. And for black and electric, it's 25% health. I didn't mention silver ones because they cannot throw weapons, which actually gives them a lower attack count than any other type. When throwing a weapon, it will deal the same damage as if you were attacked normally, leaving it on the ground. Boomerangs, however, get a 2.5 times damage bonus when thrown, and for giant boomerangs, they get a 2 times damage bonus. Now for the element-specific attacks. Fire Lizalfos have the Fire Horn Slash and Fire Breath. The Horn Slash will deal some extra fire damage, and the Fire Breath deals 4 damage initially, with 2 damage while lingering in the fire. Ice Lizalfos have their Ice Horn Slash, which deals 26 damage, and their Ice Breath deals 2. Electric ones deal a whopping 60 damage with their Horn Slash, and their Electricity Blast deals 20. With Lizalfos out of the way, let's talk about the skeletal enemies. Bokoblins, Moblins, and Lizalfos are basically their tier 1 counterparts with a lot less health. They have the same attacks as them too, except for Lizalfos. They can't do the tongue shot even if they try, which makes sense. They also can't throw weapons since you can't get them to below 50% health. All skeletons also, obviously, can't do actions that require 2 arms when they only have 1, but they can still wield any melee weapon, which includes two-handeds. On to boss Bokoblins. Punch. They can do this with either hand, but can only do a left-handed punch when wielding a weapon. That's their left, not your left. Horn charge. Can be strafed super easily by walking to the left or the right. One-handed swipe. Yeah, this one's pretty much expected. I don't really know what to put here. One-handed charge swipe. Charges before releasing, making him spin. One-handed jump attack. An AoE is created at the end of the weapon, which deals the same damage as the weapon. Two-handed swipe. It's the one-handed swipe, but with even 20% more swipe. Two-handed charge swipe. Like the one-handed charge swipe, but with a two-handed weapon. Two-handed jump attack. Similar to the one-handed jump attack, but with an even larger AoE created at the end. Actually, both AoEs are the same size. Whoopsie. Spear jab. You just got spear. Spear charge swipe. This one's a bit hard to avoid because of how long spears can get. Spear jump attack. In contrast, this one is easy to avoid. Bow shot. Unlike other enemies, black and silver boss Bokoblins will spend less time aiming before firing, but silver boss Bokoblins will still spend the least amount of time aiming. Boulder throw. Unlike pebbles, boulders that boss Bokoblins dig up will deal damage equal to their ranged damage. And of course we have object throws, which I don't know why they would throw objects when they have the boulder throw. This is the part of the video where I'm going to be an annoying YouTuber and ask you to subscribe. Please subscribe. Now for Lynels. They're pretty intimidating. Horn swipe. Unlike other horn attacks, which deal 2 times the enemy's base damage, Lynels will deal 3 times their base damage with horn attacks. Horn charge. This one can be useful to create an opening, as you can get onto a Lynel's back while it's recovering after charging. Fire breath. This one's a little interesting. Red Lynels will only do this attack while below 50% health, whereas other Lynels will do so at any point. Fire blast. Red and blue Lynels are incapable of this attack, and, let me check my notes here, it's a little difficult to get two-handed and silver spear Lynels to do this attack. One-handed swipe. Your basic one-handed swipe. One-handed triple swipe. This attack actually is different to the previous one. You can tell when a Lynel is getting ready to do this attack, as the normal one-handed swipe will get the Lynel to curve both arms and sort of lunge at you, whereas this one appears to be a quick swipe with no wind-up. One-handed running swipe. All of the running swipes don't really have much to them, so I won't be going in depth on them. One-handed running charge swipe, similar to the horn charge but with their main weapon. Two-handed running swipe. You'll never guess what this one is for. Two-handed running charge slam. This one leaves quite a large AoE at the end of the weapon, but is probably the easiest of the Lynel attacks to dodge in my opinion. Two-handed charge slam. Like the previous attack, but without a running start. Two-handed triple slam. This one is actually different to the charge slam, as it has slightly less windup, creating smaller AoEs than the single slam. Two-handed spin attack. I recommend watching out for this one because it feels like it can come out of nowhere when you're not expecting it. Spear swipe. Spear running swipe. Take that, older voice over me. Spear jump attack. This one creates a surprisingly large area of effect behind. And that's all the attacks that Spear Lynels have. It does feel like they have more than this, but Lynels like to mix their weapon attacks with their non-weapon attacks, so it sort of balances out. Bow shot. They'll only really do this attack if you're standing somewhere where they can't reach you, or if you begin combat from a far distance. Arrow rain shot. Similar to the normal arrow shot, but from above. They really nerfed this since the last game, so it's fairly easy to avoid so long as you keep moving around. Lynels are certainly the deadliest standard enemy,
Actually, Maya, they're mini bosses. You can't just go.
Oh my god, not again! Lynels are certainly the deadliest standard enemy, and silver ones can easily obliterate half of your maxed health bar in a single strike when not wearing armor. Man, I kinda use Animal Crossing music a lot. What else do I have? Oh, hell yeah! On to Horriblins. Basically just weaker ceiling Bokoblins. Unarmed swipe. For Horriblins, their unarmed swipe does half of their base damage for some reason. This makes the regular Horriblins unarmed swipe one of the weakest melee attacks in the game. Horn slam. This one is weird too, since unlike other enemies, it simply does 1 times their base damage instead of 2 times. One-handed swipe. Standard melee attacks can be pretty uncommon, as Horriblins like to attach themselves to ceilings. One-handed jump attack. Bonk, one-handed ceiling swipe. Pretty easy to avoid, especially because of the long windup. One-handed ceiling stab. Less windup, but still pretty easy to avoid. Two-handed slam. Large bonk. Two-handed ceiling stab. I'm not going to question the logistics of stabbing with such a large weapon. I guess they just have very strong wrists. Two-handed ceiling swipe. Yeah, this is just the one-handed ceiling swipe with a two-handed weapon. Spear swipe. Like most horizontal spear attacks, this one has quite a large area. Spear slam. A pretty obvious windup, so easy to avoid. Spear ceiling swipe. Just like the other ceiling swipes with more range. Spear ceiling stab. A little odd that Horriblins don't have a ground stab attack, but oh well. Ceiling boulder throw. As a lot of us probably know, Horriblins love to spam this attack. This attack deals ranged damage to account for the fact that they can't use a bow. Floor Boulder Throw. Pretty uncommon, as Horriblins need to be both unarmed and on the ground to decide if they want to do this. Overall, I just need to say that Horriblins are a pretty underwhelming enemy, since they can be easily stun-locked by just shooting them off of the ceiling with a bow. It would be nice if they spiced up their attacks more often, like jumping off of the ceiling to do an aerial attack on you. Hey, maybe in a future game we'll get boss Horriblins. I don't know. Now for constructs. Soldier constructs specifically. Punch. Getting punched by a robot probably doesn't feel very good. Hornswipe. Yep, that's a Hornswipe. Like most enemies, this does 2 times their base damage. One-handed swipe. I wish I had a fact for this, but this is literally the same as any other swipe. One-handed windmill. You spin me right round, baby, right round. Two-handed swipe. Can be followed up with another swipe if the first one didn't hit. Two-handed slam. Constructs will actively chase Link around if he tries to run from this attack. Spear jab. We've been over this already. You know what a spear jab does. Spear windmill. Only 3s and 4s can do this one, and the larger area can make this one quite a bit more dangerous. Bowshot. Soldier Construct 1s are one of the few enemies in the game that deal 0 weapon damage and 0 bow damage, so all of the damage they deal with weapons comes strictly from those weapons. And of course we have the Pebble Throw and Object Throw. You know how those ones work. On to Captain Constructs. They do not have any unarmed attacks, as they are always wielding a variant of a Zonite Sword. For Captain Construct 1s, that's a Zonite Sword. For 2s, they wield a Strong Zonite Sword. And for 3s and 4s, they wield a Mighty Zonite Sword. They can also fuse random things to their swords, so the damage can vary. Horn Slash. Fairly uncommon, as they like to use other attacks. Horizontal Swing. This one can be followed up with 2 more swings, but it doesn't really happen often. Double Windmill Swing. Random fact, any type of weapon they fuse to their sword won't get a damage multiplier, so no 25% less damage for spears and 5% more damage with two-handeds. Downward Swing. It was a bit tricky getting Captain Constructs to do this one, as you seem to need to stand in a specific spot for it to happen. Ground Slam. Captain Construct 1s are the only ones incapable of this. It's also a little bit buggy sometimes, because if they have a spear fused, it can move the hitbox into the ground. Charge. Like the previous attack, Captain Construct 1s can't do this one. Bowshot. Since the damage doesn't really ever change, and Captain Constructs will always have a specific bow, I'll just show the raw damage numbers of getting shot. Emitter Spread. Technically its own attack, as it has a separate animation. Can be easily avoided by constantly walking towards the Captain Construct. Now let's talk about the Training Construct. They're technically a Captain Construct and deal 0 base damage for every stat. So their Horizontal Swing, Vertical Swing, and Bowshot deal the damage of whatever they're wielding. Now we're moving on to a category which I like to call Miscellaneous Enemies. Let's discuss Chuchus. To preface, almost all Chuchus deal the same base damage regardless of size. Regular and Fire Chuchus have the lunge. Fire Chuchus can deal additional fire damage due to touching you when they lunge, and will deal 8 damage when they die when charged. Ice Chuchus have the Ice Blast, which deals 4 damage and also deals the same amount of damage upon dying. Electric Chuchus have the Electric Blast. This deals 4, 12, and 12 damage respective of their sizes, which also applies to when they die. Simply touching an Electric Chuchu will deal 4 damage. Moving on to Keese, each type has only one attack, Lunge. They vary a little bit in damage, but it's generally the same. Like other fire enemies, Fire Keese can deal additional damage due to being on fire, and their fire can even be doused in rain, which I do not have manual footage of because it's fairly rare. Ice Keese can freeze you on contact, and then lunge, which deals 8 damage from you being frozen. And Electric Keese deal 4 damage, but you'll usually be taking 8 damage from their lunge and the electric aura, like likes. There are 6 types of likes, which does include the Sludge-like, which is technically a boss, I know, but it's just easier to categorize it as a standard enemy. Grab. This is a really neat attack, and there are a lot of aspects to it. First, you get grabbed, obviously. You can free yourself by wiggling the movement stick, but if you're too slow, it'll steal one of your pieces of equipment. At this point, the like will try to swallow it, which can be interrupted with a power attack or some other attack that stuns it. If you wait for it to swallow your equipment, it will be lost forever until you kill it. Due to the way that the Sludge-like boss fight works, if one of your pieces of equipment gets swallowed, you lose it forever. How fun! Each respective type of like, aside from the regular one, has their own unique attacks. Fire Spit, Ice Spit, Electric Spit, Rock Spit, and Sludge Spit. Sludge-like also has a Sludge Rain attack, which can hit you for damage, but it's extremely hard to get hit by. Intentionally, at least. One last thing I'd like to mention that's pretty funny. Sidon can get grabbed by the Sludge-like's grab attack. Octoroks. Regular, water, and snow Octoroks all have spit attacks. They're pretty similar to each other, and rocks they spit have what I can only describe as janky hitboxes. When hit, you'll take 4 damage, 2 being from the initial hit, and 2 being from the explosion, meaning you can entirely avoid the first hitbox and only take 2 damage from the explosion of the rock. Here is a scuffed diagram of what I'm talking about. Fireball Launch. This one is different, as for Rock Octoroks, the rock is much bigger and has an actual explosion when landing. Weapon Spit. This one is technically an attack. When you feed a Rock Octorok a weapon, it will repair and enhance that weapon before spitting it back out at you, which deals the damage of whatever weapon you just fed it. This can only be done once per respawn, and shields and bows do not do damage when they hit you. This final attack, I like to call the Surprise. When closing in on Treasure Octoroks, they will hit you so hard that you get launched into the air, before running around and then promptly despawning. Now, for Wizzrobes there are 6 types: Fire, Ice, and Electric Wizzrobes. Then the 3 upgraded variants of those. They all mostly have the same moveset, so I won't talk about the differences unless I need to. Fireball. This attack is upgraded to a triple Fireball and can be very chaotic in grassy areas. Summon Fire Keese. The summons of Fire Keese. I don't know what to say. Summon Fire Chuchu. This one is much rarer than Summon Fire Keese. I don't know why, but they just have a stronger chance to summon Fire Keese. Fire Wizzrobes will summon a small Fire Chuchu, and Meteor Wizzrobes will summon a medium Fire Chuchu. Firestorm. Both variants will cast the same spell, causing meteors to begin falling from the sky and raising the temperature, which overheats Link. Firestorm Meteor. Yes, the meteors can actually hit you, but they have deceptively small hitboxes, so it's extremely hard to get hit by them. Ice Blast. Gets upgraded to an Ice Blast with a way larger area. Summon Ice Keese. This one summons Ganon. Just kidding, it summons an Ice Keese. Summon Ice Chuchu. Ice Wizzrobes summon small ones, and Blizzrobes summon medium ones. For some ungodly reason, Blizzrobes, and only Blizzrobes, have a higher chance to summon Chuchus than Keese. I guess the developers mixed up some numbers or something. That, or I'm just getting extremely lucky. Ice Storm. This one just makes icy meteors appear. Ice Storm Meteor. These actually have proper hitboxes unlike fire meteors. Electric Ball. This one becomes 3 electric balls when upgraded. Summon Electric Keese. Insert a random electricity pun here. Summon Electric Chuchu. Electric Wizzrobes summon small ones, and Thunder Wizzrobes summon mediums. Thunderstorm. This one isn't really an attack, but it is part of his moveset. All this does is summon a lightning storm. Gibdo and Moth Gibdo. Pretty basic enemies that I wish were expanded upon more, which is why I'm grouping them together. Punch. They can do this attack with either hand. Crawling Lunge. This one seems to be used in more specific situations, like defending Gerudo Town, and I'm not sure how to get Gibdos to trigger it outside of scripted sequences. Moth Acid Vomit. This is the only attack that Moth Gibdos have, so I don't really have much to comment on. Pebblits. Basically just baby stone taluses. Rocky Punch. For regular and Igneo Pebblits, this isn't too bad, but for Frost Pebblits, this can be especially dangerous, since they like to freeze you just before punching, which deals twice the normal amount of damage. Self-Destruct. When picked up, Pebblits will wiggle around for a bit before coming to a stop and promptly exploding. Igneo Pebblits will deal a bit of fire damage, and Frost Pebblits will freeze you. Little Frox. Yeah, they have the lunge. I don't even have any notes for this on my spreadsheet. So instead, let's talk about the Aerocuda. I wish these guys were fleshed out more, but as it stands, they're just bigger Keese. Aerial Corkscrew. They will use this if there isn't an object lying around to throw. Otherwise, they will try and throw any nearby objects. They can also pick up certain enemies off of the ground, which isn't really an attack, but it is pretty cool. The Yiga clan members. Running Slash. Yiga Footsoldiers and Blade Masters only wield a specific weapon at any time, so I'll just combine the weapon damage with the held weapon. Teleport Strike. Teleports before landing on you. Pretty simple. Bowshot. I have these as separate attacks in my spreadsheet, but the premise is pretty much the same, so I'll just combine them. All of the bow damage for foot soldiers comes from the bow itself, as their bow damage stat is set to 0. Horizontal and vertical slash. These attacks leave a trail at the end which deals 10 damage. Earthquake technique. While being casted, Blade Masters will make this funny noise, which I thought was a bug at first, but it's probably just some extremely rapid chanting or something. Closing in on the 2 final enemies, the Evermean. All of its variants have the same moveset and stats. Body Slam. Straightforward and simple, but easy to avoid. Violent Shake. This one only occurs when you're climbing an Evermean and has the extremely specific multiplier of 0.34, which is why it does 3 damage. Finally, we have the Bees, which do a whopping 1 damage. Wow. And that's all of the enemy attacks, at least the ones I'm aware of. I might have missed a few, which is fine, but I sure damn hope I got all of them. I probably could have done all the enemies in a better order, but I just did them in the order in which I studied the respective attacks. As mentioned before, I'll cover the bosses in a future episode. I really don't want to do them right now. I'm currently working on improving my art skills, hence the use of it in certain segments, so I'll be doing that a bit more. Thanks for watching, I hope you learned something new, and I wish you all a good time zone.